I've clicked onto the global tropical overview for March 17th, 2024. As is always the case in these videos, the athletic pressure are just mine, and when making any decision ahead of Tropical Cyclone Megan, look towards your local emergency management and the Bureau of Meteorology for the best information local to you. I'll be giving a big picture of things with Megan today, and I cannot get down to a local level that they can. So here's Megan here. We're going to start off with radar out of Queensland. And you can already see the storm has some impacts coming ashore. You can see a lot of outer bands here, south and east of the storm's center, which is about here. And all of these bands contain very heavy rainfall, tropical storm force winds, and the potential for tornadoes as they come ashore. So make sure you're staying tuned to the Bureau of Meteorology as these bands come ashore. And so you know if there's any severe weather or flooding alerts with these. But the main event here is here in the eye that you can see spinning offshore, not very far from the coastline. I'll get a distance of the eye wall to the closest land part. You can see there only about 36 kilometers away from the eye wall. And this is going to be a long and drawn out event, unfortunately, for this part of the coastline. As you can see, it's just not moving. This is a loop over the past hour, and this is just not moving really at all. It's almost stalled. I think the forward motion is maybe 2 or 3 knots. And even when it gets towards coastline, that may be considered somewhat fast, as there's potential that the system just completely stalls here off the coastline. But as the low tracks south over the course of the day today, the weather conditions here along this part of the coastline here are going to deteriorate. And for anyone watching along this part of the coastline, really your preparation should be done, as we already have outer bands coming through here. So make sure you're just staying in and listening to the advice of the Bureau of Meteorology and local emergency management as the storm comes through. It's not going to be the prettiest of weekends and early parts of the week, but it will eventually be over. Eventually the storm is going to be moving away, but it may take a few days for it to do so. We're now going to move to the satellite products, as we are going to take a bigger look at the big scale view. What has the storm been doing over the past day? One thing that it's been doing is it has been building the eye. I talked about last night how it had more of what was called a curved band structure, where it had a thunderstorm curving right into the center of circulation. And over time, that leads to development of an eye. And we have seen that. You can see where the eye is on visible. If you look right as the sun rises, we have a convective burst here, thunderstorm go up on the western side of the eye, and you can see it wrap around the northern side of the eye wall. Now, one important question is how well built is the eastern part of this eye wall? Radar shows that the eastern side is still open, and that is consistent with microwave imagery that we saw earlier, showing here's that deep convection that you see blowing up on the western and northern sides. But you can see the reds and yellows do not connect here on the eastern side, and it's even more prominent if you look at the low-level microwave product, with all the pinks here showing the deep convection, but the eastern side is just not having any deep convection over it. And this is an impact of some easterly wind shear that has been impacting the system today. You can see, let me go back to the visible satellite loop. This little outflow boundary moving over Queensland over the course of the morning, and this is having some thunderstorms develop on top of that. And just as soon as they fire, their tops are just getting sheared off towards the west. And this is the same shear impacting our storm today. And that's why the thunderstorms are having trouble closing off on the eastern side. They're trying to fight against that shear. Now, over time, the storm will likely be able to do that at some point. It will likely, I'd imagine, be able to close off that eye wall for a little bit of time. And if that does happen, that will be the opportunity for the storm to intensify, potentially at more of a significant degree. And that's going to be something very important to watch over the next day before it makes landfall. Now, in terms of landfall timing, we're still looking at, a day or day and a half before the system actually comes ashore and we can fully say that intensification has stopped. But before that landfall, there is something that could stop it from, being a bomb out storm here. And you can see this here in the GFS. If I go back to when the system's over the Gulf of Carpentaria, we have this developing upper ridge here over portions of Queensland and the Coral Sea. In fact, you can see this developing already on the water vapor loop. You've got westerly winds here over portions of Australia, and further north in the Coral Sea, you've got all these easterly winds. This is denoting the north and south flow of that upper ridge. And as this ridge develops, it's going to be imposing a northerly flow over the storm. Now, this isn't going to be a very strong shear in all likelihood. The storm is tracking aligned with that shear vector. However, because the system is moving so slow, the flow is likely to be a little bit stronger than its actual forward motion. So it's likely to shear somewhat. And that is probably what's going to keep it from being a bomb out storm, but it still could intensify still quite a bit before that shear actually kicks in, especially if this eastern shear is not enough to keep the eastern eyewall from closing. Now, something important to note with the forward motion is the GFS, I've noticed, has been a little bit fast with this. You can see it comes in what in this case would be a pretty quick pace, while the European has it really just stalling offshore. I talked about the potential for it to stall. From what I can tell, the GFS is just being a little too fast with our storm right now. So right now, I'd be more in line with the European idea here. And this would be good because this is allowing the shear to have more of an impact on the storm. You can see all these blues here, and that would be shearing the storm. And that would be not the strongest shear, it would be moderate, but that could still cause some disruption of it. Now, an unfortunate aspect of the shear is because it's coming out of the north, all the thunderstorms associated with the storm are just going to be pushed off towards the south. So all the strongest winds that are likely on the western and northern sides, those are just going to get pushed down to the south. And as the system just sits here off the coastline, we're going to be dealing with very heavy rainfall, cyclone force winds, and prolonged storm surge along really this entire part of the coastline. One of the most dangerous impacts is also going to be rainfall along a large portion of this coastline. This is the forecast from the HAFS model, and I know this is in inches. I'll translate it to millimeters, but you can see this very heavy swath of rainfall, and this is 200, 300 millimeters of rainfall in some localized spots, potentially 400 to 500 millimeters of rainfall falling across that region. And you can see it's also not just there where the system's coming ashore. We also have this stronger band here over portions of Queensland. And this is likely one of the outer bands, and I'll show you those right now on the radar. It's likely one of these outer bands on the model training over one specific area. Now, an aspect of that is those bands are very hard to predict exactly where they're going to stall over. So this could change even now being, the event right now. And the exact heaviest totals may change from what this model shows. But like I talked about when we were looking at radar at the beginning, you need to make sure you stay tuned to meteorology so you know if there are flood alerts going up and if there are severe alerts as well. As again, you could also have tornadoes with those outer bands as they come ashore. Finally, this is the current forecast cone from the Bureau of Meteorology. You can see a cyclone warning in place for a large portion of the coastline. I know it may seem, a bit weird to have it down here in parts of Queensland, but keep in mind, the cyclones are not just one fine point. You could see that on the radar. Their impacts are stretching here well east, even outside of the cyclone warning area. And one of the most dangerous impacts will be storm surge as the system slowly crawls on shore. You could have a lot of flooding along the coastline here, and I'm especially concerned about that just east of the landfall spot. And that will be certainly a big issue. But you can see the forecast having the storm intensify into a category 3. Could it get a little bit stronger? It's within the realm of possibility, but focusing on the exact intensity here, not the most important thing. Make sure you stay focused on really the big scale impacts of this. This is a very significant storm, and you can see the timing here, like I talked about with that slow motion. This forecast point, the initial point is 7 in the morning this morning, so about almost 2 hours ago from the time of this recording, and the landfall point is 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. So it's going to be a very long and drawn out event. I'll have more posts online on my Twitter page, and as well, I'll have likely another video before the system actually does make landfall. But again, along the coastline in this entire cyclone watch and warning area, make sure you're staying tuned to the Bureau of Meteorology and the local emergency management so you know exactly what's going on and what you need to do. And of course, stay safe as the system does pass through. I'll leave a link to the Bureau of Meteorology website so you can skip ahead to that website and get right to the cyclone page and get the latest cyclone bulletins. There will be another one coming out in a little bit after this video comes out. That's all that I've got for today. Thank you for watching, and again, stay safe.